Thank you for joining the fifth part of Quiltmania's Mystery Quilt. We will assemble the 4 blocks that you've been doing since January with Sashing and Cornerstones. I cut 12 strips from the book pages print size 4 x 16.5 inches. For the corner blocks, I cut 5 blue and 5 green squares size 5 inches 1/4. I layer the squares right sides together. I use a soft lead pencil and draw the diagonal from corner to corner. And I stitch 1/4 inch from each side of the line, and I cut the squares apart on the diagonal line with a rotary cutter and a ruler. I yield 2 triangle squares that I will layer right sides together, seams aligned, the blue triangle on top of the green one. There must be no space between the seams allowances. You fill this with your fingertip. Then, with the ruler and the pencil, draw a diagonal line from corner to corner. And again, stitch 1/4 inch from each side of the line. I yield after cutting with the rotary cutter. I yield 2 hourglass blocks that I'm going to press. I have used oversized squares, which I'm going to resize to 4 inches units. Use the BS square ruler. Align the diagonal of the ruler with your seam. The center of the square being 5 centimeters on the ruler. And make 2 cuts. Turn the block, place the ruler again, using this time the 10 centimeter mark. Of course, you use the 4 inches mark of your inch ruler. And always make sure the center is aligned with the middle of the block. And press fast whilst cutting. Here we are, 1 hourglass block finished. Do 9 more this way. I'll now prepare the sashing rows. I take the sashing strips and put 1 cornerstone on top, and I sew them together. I prepare 3 strips this way. I have a design layout sheet in my sewing room that I find very useful. You see the sashing strip that I have just sewn, plus the quilt I have already worked on previously, and where the trapunto is already done. I always sew vertical strips so they can stick onto the layout sheet. If I sew horizontal strips, they fall off. Also note that the corner blocks are set at random the blue triangles, ones on top and bottom, ones on the sides. You can set them as I did, but if this bothers you, you can place them all the same way. It's your quilt, so do as you please. And now I show you how I sew the strips to the blocks. Before that, I precise that it's important that you cut your strips in the lengthwise grain. That means the long sides are parallel to the selvage. So take your fabric and cut one strip from selvage to selvage 16.5 inches long, and then cut your sashing strips this way. When you're done, prepare 3 long strips made with 3 corner blocks and 2 sashing strips. Then sew the remaining sashing strips to the blocks into vertical rows. And finally, sew the sashing and block rows together, matching seam intersection. Now I show you how I proceed to join the sashing strips to the blocks. You saw that stuffing makes the block shrink, and you might think that there isn't enough fabric left to match with the sashing strips. Well, the block shrinks where you applicate, but on the edges you still have the length needed. So pin, using the cornerstones to adjust the length. Here I have a slight problem because my seam allowance was shifted to the opposite side due to the trapunto. Normally the seam allowance are pressed towards the sashing strips. So I just disregard and I put it back where it's supposed to be. And I have again opposing seams. I check that they butt up against one another. No gap between them, and I pin the seams in place. I do the same with the other cornerstone. I put a pin on each side. One here, and one at the outer edge. So now I lay everything flat, and it seems I have excess fabric on top, but when I pull, the strip and the block length match. I align edges and I put a pin in the center. I always work by half sections. I pull, I align edges, and I put a pin in the center. I pull, align, and pin. And I will repeat this process on the other half. One strip is finished. I'll do the same with the other strip. And note that it's important, if you sew with the machine, that you place the sashing strip on top, because you cut the strips in the lengthwise grain, they won't stretch and you'll have a better result. When your center top is finished, you can take the nice leaf designs from your Quilt Mania. You can place them according to the photo you find in the magazine or as you wish. I have drawn them directly onto the fabric. If you're a good drawer, you can do that with a blue water erasable pen. The other solution being draw them onto tracing paper. And you see that this enables you to place the leaves exactly where you want. Then take carbon paper, place it beneath the tracing paper without moving it, and with an awl or some blunt pointed tool, report the design of the leaves. When the design is drawn, take some pieces of cheesecloth on the back, spray some temporary glue on it and make it stick. The cheesecloth extends beyond the design. Then use the mix of running and backstitch to embroider the outlines. The result looks like a dotted line. The stitch length is about 1/8 inch. You can make them slightly smaller if you wish, but it's not necessary. Just be careful when you stuff. So technically speaking, it's not necessary to make very small stitches. I find it nicer when they're irregular, with little spaces between the stitches. The result being light, not something that will not supplant the blocks. After having done the embroidery, you must stuff, and then you need to cut the excess of cheesecloth off. See, that's what I've done here. Please use small scissors. With a big one, you might cut into your fabric, and you don't want that, do you? So I catch and unstick the cheesecloth and trim, leaving about 1/10 inch margin. My finger is just beneath the cheesecloth to prevent from any accident, and I work slowly all around the trapunto and embroidery using small scissors. I always cut the cheesecloth off because this layer hampers me when I quilt. And at some places, you even have 2 layers of cheesecloth, so you must cut it off. All the blocks have been trimmed, and now some indications as to the colors used for embroidery. I used 1 strand of black plus 2 strands of another color, any of the greens, the blue, here the variegated orange, another green, and here I used red.